Computer. There we go. So, hello everyone, and welcome to this really awesome special episode of the Naked and Unashamed Life podcast, both in video and in audio at the same time. So, I'm really excited because I'm interviewing and meeting with not just a friend and colleague, but also a former client of mine, Justine Dean. So, we're going to be talking about her experience of us working together and what came up for her and how it impacted her. So, first of all, can you just tell everyone who you are, where you are in the world, what you do? Just introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I live in Australia on the south coast of New South Wales, a couple of hours south of Sydney. I'm ex-corporate. We semi-retired at Christmas time to come and move from the city to the coast. And I'm a coach. So I work with women as well, professional and entrepreneurial women, but I work from home, which is really good. I have two adult sons. I'm a middle-lifer, refusing to grow up. And I think the other thing that's, pardon?
There's hope for me then.
Oh, 100%. I think the important thing to note for context around the podcast too is that I'm a childhood sexual assault survivor. And that has impacted why I became a coach. But it's interestingly why I also blocked the somatic side of things for so long.
Yeah. And this was, I mean, I have a whole set of questions that we've gone through before this interview. And I will say that this is one of the big components of our work together, going more into the somatic and the body embodiment, in body work. Because I remember you saying when we kind of had a debrief afterwards, you were saying that you did years of talk therapy, but very little gone into helping and healing your own sexuality.
Yeah, the physical side of it. So you can do a lot of theory, a lot of talk therapy. You can understand it on an intellectual level, but actually doing the work facilitated is the key. The way that you do it has made a tremendous difference. And I think it's a key element that is missing from a lot of work that we do when we, start the healing process from whatever we're doing.
Yeah, the body is often missed out. And especially when it comes to sex and sexuality, which is like a very embodied experience. We need to be working with the literal physical body. And so just for our listeners, like, did you have any background in exploring your sexuality or any kind of, I could say, sexual healing modalities, or what was your kind of background in working with your own sexuality, or what you tried before?
Nothing. Seriously, like I'd, when I actually had not considered that it was important, or I'd actually, no, that's not correct to say that. In a way, I thought, what, I've done all of the work in inverted commas, the things that happened to me when I was little, and since then I've dealt with that again in inverted commas. But it wasn't until so I hadn't really looked at. I knew it was available, and I had followed you. When we met a few years ago, I'd followed you. I was so curious, and I thought, what is it in me that's really drawn and curious about this? When I thought intellectually that I'd sorted everything out. Yeah.
And something that it reminds me of is in my own, say, healing journey with my own sexuality, I felt in like unpeeling layers of the onion. And I think it's like with any kind of healing process, there's points, it's on one hand, it's a constant unpeeling. And we get to a point where we think, yeah, I'm done. I'm good. I'm really good. I'm sorted. I'm there. And then something else happens and you're, whoop, okay.
Yeah.
Obviously not.
Yeah, exactly. And I've found that during our work together, there was a couple of things that really surprised me. But when we started working together, my intention was to actually get more into my body, because I disassociate a lot. even in in daily life, I'll disassociate. When you're driving in your car and you might be on a 30-minute trip and you've been driving for 10 minutes and you pull up at the lights and then you think, oh, crap, I don't remember the last 10 or 15 minutes. Did I stop at the last set of lights? And I think that's how I was going through life, and also intimacy and sexuality was not being present. And that was something that I was really curious about exploring with you, about being present, being in my body. Yeah.
And can you tell me a bit more about where you were when we started working together, and what were like the big struggles? What were the big things that were present?
I knew that I was not present and in my body. And when I was talking to girlfriends, I was noticing some of them were talking about their feelings, like their physical feelings and their ability to feel enormous pleasure. And I thought, well, I feel pleasure, but enormous pleasure. I thought, oh, golly, maybe that's just available for some people. But I thought, well, shit, if it's available for somebody else, it's got to be available to me too. And why isn't it? So that had me a little bit curious as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
And this is something that I see a lot in the women and femmes that come to me. It's like, okay, everyone else, quote unquote, is talking about all this amazing sex they're having, or all these
Yeah.
orgasms, and okay, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah, well, there was an inconsistency
Yeah.
with me, and I knew that there was things that I was blocking and not feeling. I was very aware that I was disassociating. And I also wanted to accept myself as a sexual being. Even, how like it's funny how we know it,
Yeah.
but being it and feeling it were two different things. And I was really frustrated because of all the training I've done and all the coaching I've done. As a coach and as a client, that part I had actively avoided pursuing as well, because I'm the master deflector on top of everything else. I was just scared. I was scared.
Yeah. And it's well, as you're saying that, it's what's coming up is like a big part of what I try and do in my work, whoever I'm working with, is like on the technical side, you could say affirming yourself as a sexual being. But like if you're
Yeah.
watching the video version of this, listeners, followers, whatever, you would have seen that I'm kind of making saucy eyes at Justine and going, yeah, you as a sexual being.
Yeah,
Because
you
like,
are.
yeah, because like a lot of our work together is me going, you still got it.
And that is the best part. And it's interesting. I remember when I was in my mid-20s and I would get my little black dress on and go out and dance and feel sexual on the dance floor and love that I was getting attention and, the seductress part of me.
Yeah.
But then it switched off. Like I didn't take things further. I could have had so much more fun. But that's when I sort of blocked myself as well. So it's also brought a lot of fun back in for me rather than all of the seriousness.
Yeah, and I think especially in like some personal development work and therapy and coaching, we can get really serious about it. Or like
Mm,
a lot of yoga classes, it's like, sit up straight, find the pose. And you're also a former corporate as well. And so
yeah,
it's like, with the women and femmes that I work with, it's very much that losing that element of play and that element of having fun. And this work gets to be fun, it gets to be saucy, we get to crack inappropriate dirty jokes, and that's part of it. And also
yeah,
it's really common where I have women and femmes coming to me where when they were I say in their 20s, like I'm 34 and I'm still technically a spring chicken, but like, I was doing all these things when I was younger and I was really
yeah,
wild and I've lost it. And I'm like,
yeah.
it's still there. We just have to.
Yeah, well, I think one of the best things you ever said to me when I was describing a situation in my early 30s or late 20s was your body does know how to do it.
Yeah.
Your body does remember, it's already done it. And that was like a big light bulb moment for me that I had it and I didn't lose it.
Yeah.
I actually, like, my body knows what to do.
Yeah.
And that was a really big light bulb moment for me.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's been part of my own process, and what I then aim to give the clients. It's like you never didn't have the ability, or ability
Yeah.
with a word. It's all there. Your body is
Mm.
hardwired for it. It's just remembering, or helping your body and helping yourself remember again. Because
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of clients, or people thinking about working with me, it's that thing of, when will I get to there? Like, I'm here and I'm thinking about this place far off in the future that's outside of myself, where I will
Mm.
transform into this multi-orgasmic Jessica Rabbit goddess. And that's absolutely possible, but it's more like,
Mm.
but it's already here. It's less about
Yeah.
changing per se, and kind of uncovering what's already there, because
Mm.
it's there and it was always yours.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely.
And so what were you a bit worried about or concerned about of when you first started working with me, or what were your maybe expectations?
I was scared.
Mm-hmm.
I trusted you implicitly because we had met, um, a couple of years prior, and I've been watching you and just thinking, God, I'd love to work with you. I was so curious, but I was still really scared because I thought, knowing what I know about the work that I do, I thought, what's going to be uncovered?
Mm.
Is there going to be something raw come up? And having been through what I've been through as a child and also as a young adult, the risk of trusting another woman as well,
Yeah.
and feeling safe with someone, but you completely covered that the first time we spoke. I was like, I feel safe, I'm in great hands. So yeah, I think I was scared about being vulnerable,
Mm.
and scared. It's funny, how you're talking about that long-term thing where we see this multi-orgasmic being and we want to get there, and what's the bridge between here and there.
Yeah.
I think the best thing to do with this kind of work, when people work with you, is not to have an expectation about an end result, because it's really surprising that how much is actually not that, but
Mm.
it'll still get you there. Like, it's just trusting the process
Yeah.
and understanding that the things that we've blocked over time or disregarded,
Mm.
can very gently be facilitated, because we have expectations about what that means or what it's going to be like, or
Yeah.
are those conversations going to be difficult.
Yeah.
So we're all like, that time I freaked out and I was all like head up and panicking. It's only because I made up a story in my head about what it was going to be like and what that conversation and that activity was going to be like. And it
Yeah.
was nothing like that. So
Yeah.
I think, yes, I came into it with fear, but the beauty of it was how safe you made me feel.
Thank you. It's also
Mm.
that one of the ways when we were having that freak out, and something I believe in, is that it's when anybody has a freak out or any kind of thing where our nervous systems or another part of us goes, whoa, it's
Yeah.
it's not making it bad or wrong, and saying
Yeah.
it's coming up for a really good reason, and it's meant to be coming up. Let's treat
Mm.
this, whether it's freak out or whether it's quote unquote self-sabotage, or generally you're putting the brakes on, going, can't do this anymore. Treating it with curiosity, and okay,
Mm.
this is good, this is meant to be coming up. Let's treat it with curiosity and compassion,
Yeah.
rather than going into your what's it your self-sabotaging, we've got to push through it, which is
Yeah.
some forms of coaching, but not all.
But the best thing about that occasion was the compassion with which you handled it. Because if you remember, I messaged and said, no, can't do it. I
Yeah.
don't want to do it. I want to cancel. Give me a few weeks.
Yeah.
And you just, and that's a pattern of mine, is if I'm afraid, I just shut down. And you just had this gentle inquiry, and it's, hey, let's just, help me understand what it is. And your, you know, it wasn't that, hey, you're being triggered and you're self-sabotaging, and that guilt and that shame,
Yeah.
which is what drives survivors of sexual abuse. So you were not that. You were the opposite. It was just this beautiful, gentle inquiry and compassion that instantly settled me, and you asked me the right questions, and I felt so safe and so heard. And we still postponed a week,
Yeah.
but it wasn't me trying to control the situation and shut things down and not feel it.
Mhm.
It was me going, okay, I get that this is different, and it's not my old stuff,
Mm.
and it's something new. And it was one of the most significant things that you did for me during our work together. I
Mm.
don't know if you realize that.
Oh, I think so. I think so. Oh,
Yeah, it was
it's so,
big.
I mean, it's also why this is why, well, when I talk about my work being as trauma informed as possible,
Mm,
part of that is giving choice, and
yeah.
like knowing it's less, because in a lot of, also some forms of coaching and therapy, and also exists in a lot of tantra and conscious sexuality as well, where it's this thing where the
Mm,
teacher or coach or guru knows best, and if you're not doing
yeah.
it, you're doing it wrong, or it's on you. But
Yeah.
part of, say, trauma healing, and I don't know, I just think it's a really good approach, is that
Mm,
giving choice, in that you always get to do.
yeah.
So if something's too much, great, we'll adapt it. And
Yeah.
that's half the work, realizing that you're in the driver's seat. And
Mm,
it means that it creates more safety, because sex is a big, it's a, my former mentor, Dr. Patty British, it's a lightning rod topic. It brings up a lot, even when you're not a
yeah.
sex,
Mm,
it's giving choice.
yeah.
Um, because I have my list of questions here, just so that we're really getting into this. Um, I'm curious, like, what was different about our work from other stuff? Because you're a veteran of personal development, coaching, therapy. You've probably done a hell of a lot, not necessarily more, but different stuff than I've done. What was different about our work?
Well, I knew all the theory,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but had bluntly refused to investigate the somatic side of things or the feeling side of things.
Yeah.
Having said that, saying I knew the theory was I'm trauma informed, I have lived experiences,
Mm.
but because I'd never investigated the somatic side of things and the feeling side of things, and I haven't studied what you've studied, there was a huge part of it where I was completely ignorant.
Mm.
I kind of knew,
Yeah.
but I didn't. And the expertise with which you guided me through things was incredible. It was really eye-opening.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
So yeah, yeah.
And also the sex part.
And the sex part too. Yes.
Talking about explicitly working with sex, your body, everything.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I will say that all of our work that we did was fully clothed. So for anyone
Yes.
unsure,
Yeah.
everything that we did was fully clothed.
Mm.
And were there any like big breakthroughs, or what were some of the breakthroughs or realizations that you had when we worked together?
It's really interesting how much lands after our sessions,
Yeah.
because it's opening up a part of you that, consciously or subconsciously you've just put on a shelf for later because, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
I have a great sex life, but, so it's not that bad. But one of the things that hit me afterwards was I was with hubby and I got triggered and I'm like, oh shit. And I realized, because of what we just discussed,
Mm.
that I need words.
Mm.
I didn't understand. I need communication during sex.
Mm.
So my abuser never said a word
Mm.
whilst he was, assaulting me, and insisted that I stay very, very quiet and very, very still. And so when my husband would be quiet during intimacy, I would freak out and stiffen up, and it was nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
And I hadn't realized the link because I'd locked it up in a box. And because we'd sort of opened the box gently and we were just investigating things. And I actually I had a conversation with him, and I said, because he's aware of what happened. So it was beautiful because I was able to have a conversation with him and say, hey, I need you to talk more. You know, don't be quiet. Talk to me. And that was really cool. It was a huge realization for me, and it was wonderful for us. So it's very healing.
Yeah. And because you were saying that you didn't know it was a trigger before.
No. And how could he know? And I didn't know. Like, I didn't realize. I didn't put two and two together.
No.
And like I said, this didn't land until a couple of days after one of our sessions. And I was like, holy shit, that's it. That's what it is. And it was a big thing. I know it might not sound much to some, but it was big.
And also it's in the course of this work together, it's usually these really what you would think of insignificant moments that turn out to be the big thing. And it goes back to this thing where when we start doing this healing work on our sexuality and sexual liberation, we think that there's going to be this like cataclysmic moment where like you have this shaking orgasm and you see God and everything just changes, and that can happen, but it's often more the things that you wouldn't think about until it's, oh my God.
Yeah, it's the subtleties. There were so many little surprises where there weren't even dots before and the dots were joining.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of aha moments. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, because I know you talked about that you're married, even though the work that we did was more about you and your sexuality, even though most of the people that come to work with me, they are married or in relationships or partnerships, and they probably want to know, yeah, but how did it impact your relationship with your husband? Do you feel open to sharing some of that, or what?
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest thing was that it opened up communication, because I was starting to understand more about myself and my the way that my body reacted or reacts unconsciously. So I guess it was opening up communication. I realized why I was freezing. I was able to communicate that with him, because the other thing is, you know, we don't talk to our partner if we think there's something wrong with us, or we're afraid of having those conversations. And I felt really comfortable. I mean, he makes it very safe. I know I can talk to him about anything, but you don't know what you don't know. So once I knew, then I was able to have the conversation. And he was like, okay, great. You know, so that it really changed the way that we communicated. So it was really, really useful in that aspect. Because the other thing is we put a lot of shame on ourselves. You know, we've got a partner who loves us and wants us to, you know, have all the fireworks and everything go off, and they get frustrated and they may blame themselves or get, you know, worry. And I think one of the big things is, and I've spoken to a few women about this because I told them I was coming on this podcast, and they're like, you know what, we have just let things go because it's not that bad. And I said, well, what if it could be better, even by a few percent? And what if it could be better by a lot? And that really got them just going, oh, okay, I didn't know that was available.
And this is, I know it's something I'm really passionate about. It's that women and people socialized as female, it's not common that we're taught and encouraged that actually there is so much more available, and our pleasure and our things are our birthright, and we deserve so much more than sex. Right. You know, it's just about a baseline, keeps things just about ticking over. So I'm not worried about him leaving me, or because I hear this a lot as well, it's really, it gets to be really, really good for you.
Yeah.
I want this for every single woman.
Yeah. Oh, me too. Me too. Yeah.
And what have been like some of the biggest growth and changes for you doing this work? And like, how has your own sexual confidence changed?
Making friends with my body.
Hmm.
As I said earlier, I'd compartmentalized everything. I'm just checking my notes here, everything physical. So I would
Yeah.
throw myself into hard labor.
Yeah.
I used to run a sheep and cattle station for a decade with my ex-husband. And
Wow.
so I'd throw myself into physical hard labor and feel the pleasure of having, I suppose it's the same as a workout at the gym.
Yeah.
So I felt the pleasure of having feeling strong and feeling like I'd achieved something, and then endorphins running through my body.
Yeah.
But I'd compartmentalized that as my only physical pleasure.
Yeah.
And because I had chosen someone who was quite abusive to be with
Hmm.
with my ex, there was no pleasure
Yeah.
at all with intimacy.
Yeah.
And I was very shut down. Whereas my husband, who I've been with for 21 years, is just beautiful, but I had still had to learn to connect with myself physically. So mainly making friends with my body.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. And I this is a really big important thing for so many women and femmes. It's great to want to have all these orgasms and pleasure, but when you're not
Mm.
able to feel your body in the first place, it's kind of one of the foundations. It's,
Yeah.
but if you think about it, it's a no-brainer when you really think about it. It's very hard to have pleasure and orgasms when you can't feel your body in the first place.
Mm.
And it needs to start more or less here, and then it's easier to feel pleasure and orgasms, and also being within a safe relationship,
Yeah.
because with your abusive ex, your nervous system and body was doing a very wise thing by shutting you down,
Mm.
because
Yeah, completely shut down. Mm.
it wasn't safe. So it was actually a very
Mm.
wise thing that it was doing.
Yeah.
And now you're in a safer relationship, and also you're much more confident in all of these things within yourself, so it's now safe.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
um what exercises or what were like some of your favorite exercises or techniques that really helped, that we did in our work together?
Two things. I loved your meditation. That was, I enjoy facilitated meditations anyway, but that we did a meditation one day, and I was just like, it was interesting how beautifully connected it helped me feel to my physical body.
Mm.
And the other one was holding my vulva.
Mm.
It was so funny what went through my head when we were there, and obviously there was permission and consent.
Yeah.
I'll put context in it. It led to me doing that exercise where it's just like, just hold her. And I'm like, this is weird. And yet, and yet now I will actually find that I do that naturally. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'm just holding on to her, just holding. And I'm like, it's almost like a self-soothing thing. Whereas I never would have, it's just because there's a separation. Like I said before, there's a bridge between the whiz bang fireworks and everything.
Yeah.
There's so much in between here and there
Yeah.
that we have never learned, that we don't consider, even people who are not survivors of sexual abuse. There's so much that we're not educated about.
Mm.
So I initially just thought, oh my God, this is so weird. And then I'm like, okay, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. And now I'm
Find a
like,
little
I
stranger on the
naturally,
internet.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I was thinking I'm going to mention it because it was a significant thing and it's
Yeah.
had an impact. Yeah, yeah. It's literally, yeah.
It's
Mm.
it's an exercise that originally comes from sexological body work and somatic sex education,
Mm.
Dr. Joseph Kramer. I think it's Dr. Joseph Kramer or Joseph Kramer. Anyway, and it's it's hands down one of the most popular exercises I do with my clients. And
Mm.
every time, not every, most times I do it with clients, it's often this feeling of wholeness.
Yes, that's a good word for it. Yeah.
And also when you said like cupping your vulva is like self-soothing,
Mm.
that's a really
Yeah.
normal thing to do. Like kids do it. Kids will cup
Mm.
genitals just for self-soothing. As
Yeah.
adults, we can do it as well. And
Yeah.
it's and for any listeners in the, is it episode 12, I think I lead you through the hand heart vulva exercise, so you can check out
Mm.
one of the previous episodes. I'm not sure which order I'll be releasing these episodes, but it's the previous episode, episode 12. For anyone
Mm-hmm.
who wants to try this exercise for themselves. And what were there any other like surprises or like unexpected benefits on the rest of your life when we did this work together?
Noticing pleasure more,
Hmm.
you know, and I'm not talking about orgasmic pleasure. I'm talking about not running on auto. Remember, I was talking about driving in your car and sort of being a bit disassociated. One of the tasks, you were tasking me with, let's just notice pleasure. Let's
Yeah.
stop and pay attention to things that give you pleasure. And that was really lovely.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. And it,
So
yeah.
now, even every day, I might enjoy, I don't know, a great bowl of soup or something. I'm like, and it's brought back the childlike curiosity and when you watch a toddler eat something they really love, they nosh into it, and you can see they're really enjoying it. It's pleasurable for them. And I didn't notice the connection between paying attention to pleasure in everyday life
Yeah.
so that it enhanced your pleasure when you're intimate.
Mm. Yeah.
Because if you're denying pleasure and ignoring it everywhere, how on earth can you then all of a sudden switch it on? So
Yeah.
that was a great exercise, and that's a good impact. Mm.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's and I one of my things I like to do in this work is drawing these parallels in which ways in which you're already experiencing pleasure, ways in
Mm.
which you already know how to do this. It's already part of
Yeah.
life. So again, it's less about like I'm going to be getting to this place where I'm a completely different person and it's over there, rather than, oh,
Mm.
it's already here. My vulva is literally already here.
Yeah.
Pleasure is already here. Oh,
Yeah.
this is within my reach, rather than, oh God, I have to completely change my life
Yeah.
and do something. Um, what was, I guess this kind of follows on, what was the overall impact of our work on your whole quality of life and well-being?
Uh, I think it was I've actually written notes about this. I'm so glad you sent me the questions. The quality of life and well-being would have been the way that you handled me when I had that freak out.
Mhm.
That was significant because it's funny. I do that for others, for my clients, but I'd never. Okay, this is the key: receiving.
Mm.
So the impact of that, the quality of life thing was it taught me to receive. So
Mm.
receive pleasure, receive support,
Yeah.
um, because when that happened, you were talking to a very young version of me and you handled it magnificently.
Mm.
That was an exceptional lesson in self-compassion as much as it was in receiving support.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was another big sort of key. Mm.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's this is what I want all of our inner little children to feel loved and held and supported
Mm.
in all of this work. Um,
Mm.
what like for somebody considering doing this work with me or working with a sex coach, what advice would you give to them? And if they're unsure or not sure if this is the right thing for them?
Oh, it's absolutely the right thing. I think anybody who's following you, like any kind of healing work of any sort, you wouldn't be wondering about it if you were fulfilled and satisfied,
Mm.
and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So nothing's going to change if you don't do anything about it. And why not follow your curiosity? Because as I experienced, it wasn't just one thing that I got from it.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't know what I expected, but I knew something was missing.
Yeah.
And I knew that somatic piece, that feeling piece, that getting into my body and pleasure and orgasms and all that sort of thing
Mm.
could be magnified.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize all the other wonderful things that would come of it.
Mm.
Like, we only have one life. This kind of work that you do is not something to be stuck on a shelf for later.
Yeah.
This is something to do now. I consider it an investment and not an expense
Mm.
because of the ripple effect of your work, how it impacts so many other areas. You know, how we do one thing is how we do everything.
Mm.
And I had always preached that whilst ignoring my feeling self, my physical body, my sensuality.
Mm. Yeah, I love that.
So for anybody who's considering doing this work, as a woman, I want every woman to have. And the thing is, Lucy, I don't think you've realized that you've opened up Pandora's box for me,
Oh.
because now I want to do more work. I want to see what else is possible. I know that even though what we did was quite profound, it's just scratched the surface
Mm.
because I've ignored it and pushed it aside and stuck it on a shelf for so long.
Mm.
And just because I'm, midlife, I'm in my mid-50s, also doesn't mean that it's too late or that it's, not a priority, right?
No, it is never too
Yeah,
late.
that's right.
Whenever
It's
bloody
never too
too late.
late to have a fantastic orgasm, like, seriously.
No, because I know one of my many things I get on my soapbox about it is I'm getting pointy. It is never, ever, ever too late. I plan to be
No,
multi, I plan to be multi-orgasmic until my last dying breath, hopefully well into the 90s. So never too late.
no, no. And I think we are really good at denying ourselves a lot of stuff and self-sacrificing, and this is another thing
Mm.
that's on that shelf right at the back,
Mm.
gathering dust and cobwebs that we never look at. Because, like I said before, and I spoke to quite a number of people when I was doing the work with you, and they're like, oh, well, it's not that bad. It's actually quite good. And then I was talking about what we were doing with them, and they're like, oh, shit, it actually could be a lot better. Like, why am I settling
Yeah.
when I could be having more and my partner could be having more
Mm.
with me,
Yeah.
of me? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mm.
Does. Don't put it on the shelf. Take it off the shelf.
Take it off the shelf, dust it off, give it a little polish,
Make a little box,
hold it for a little while.
put it in a pretty box,
Yes.
and put the pretty box right in front of you.
I just thought of something too. The book that you recommended, that I can't remember the name of, I couldn't buy that fast enough. Like, I ordered that immediately.
The vulva book.
Yes.
Yeah, that one.
And you must put the link to that in or something. But that book was fascinating. And it's really funny. I read a couple of the stories, and I shut it and I'm like, oh no. And then I go back out of curiosity, and what fascinated me, it just normalized so much for me and completely dispelled all of these bullshit myths about it. Yeah, absolutely. That was one that I'd forgotten to write down.
The book is called, 1 second. Let me sit with my.
I think that book should be gifted to every woman on the planet. Yeah.
So if you're listening on the audio, I just took my wheelie chair and scuttled over to my bookshelf, and I've now scuttled back. And it's called, what's it?
Is it Womanhood or something?
Womanhood, the Bare
Yeah.
Reality by
Mm,
Laura Dodsworth.
yeah.
Not a plug for me. I'm not earning any commission off this unless I put an Amazon link. Anyway, but it's a book where this photographer, she photographed 100 vulvas.
Mm,
And then you never learn the identities or their names.
mm.
So it's a picture of their vulva and then their story. And it's really, really powerful.
Yeah, reading the stories was incredibly powerful, and a couple of them I had light bulb moments. And I don't think we talk about this stuff enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also we don't see vulvas like in the wild per se. Like,
And
it's
not real ones either, because, you know, yeah, we've got a perception of what they should look like.
yeah.
And so we judge ourselves immediately. And mm,
I've had a few clients where they felt really embarrassed about the size of their labia and the shape of their vulva because we don't see other vulvas apart from in
mm,
where usually often in porn the performers have had some form of labiaplasty and bleaching and waxing. So that's not how most vulvas look. Most pussies
mm,
look. So I really, really recommend this book just a way as a way of normalizing your body. Your vulva is just
mm,
another body part.
yeah.
And you know, I can go on a whole tangent about that. Um, so I think we covered this already. Is there any kind of final words you want to share, maybe to my listeners about whether they want to do this work, or any final words you want to share?
I feel this work is so essential. You can do all of the theory and read all of the books, but I think specifically the gift in this and the best way to get the most value out of it is the facilitated work,
Yeah,
like one-on-one, that relationship. I think group work would be great, but for me, the most value was in that intimate relationship that you have with your clients
yeah.
is so unique.
Mm, mm.
Um, yeah, this is essential work. Take it off the shelf and look at it, because you will love it.
It's funny. I had this image of like taking your dusty sex toys from the back of the like the metaphor of like taking your sex toys out of the back of the dusty drawer, dusting them off, giving them a clean, charging them up. That was the image I had.
Can you imagine it? Oh my goodness.
We know actually one of the things I learned early on in my training and my own work was to with your sex toys, put them in a really nice box. And
Mm.
it's, it sounds so silly, but like actually put your sex toys and your lube and everything in a nice box or a nice bag.
And velvet bags, it's like, yeah.
So that it becomes a whole lovely experience rather than
Mm.
a lot of, for some clients, they've had to kind of bury them underneath the clothes, under their drawers, so that maybe their kids
And
can
that just
find them.
compounds, yeah, that just compounds shame and, all the yuck. Yeah.
And we don't want the yuck
No yuck. Mm.
unless it turns you on, but we don't want the yuck. So how can, if people want to find you and follow you themselves, do you want to share any links or how people can follow you or connect with you if they're curious?
Yeah, I'm on all social media. Generally, if you search Justine Dean Official, um, probably I'll give you a link maybe to pop in the podcast, just a link tree, and that'll, go on. That'll be easy to find me that way.
Fabulous.
Mm.
So
Mm.
it's been so yummy and lovely to connect with you across the world, because I'm in Vienna,
Yeah,
you are in Australia. We are thousands of miles apart, and it's
yeah.
nighttime where you are, daytime where I am, cold where you are, bloody hot where I am. So polar differences. Anyway, it's been lovely. And for all listeners of the Naked and Unashamed Life podcast, if you've enjoyed this episode, please do rate, like it on whatever podcast platform you're listening on, whether it's Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Follow me on Instagram at lucylourowitt.com. And if you want to learn more about working with me, I'll put the links in the show notes. I would love to support you in your own sexual blossoming and liberation.
Mm.
So bye. Stop